Thanks, Scott, as well. So let's start the introduction first. That what exactly do you have? Would you get in this course, Zero to CCNA? What exactly are we going to go through, and what is the structure? How the EVNG works, and the protocol or the software that we are going to use to learn all the protocols, and also what is expected from your side in this course. So all these things we will have covered here, so that everything is clear before we start the technical stuff, right? All right. So let's get started. So introduction. First of all, let's talk about the course structure. How we are going to move forward. So because it's a weekly course, as you can see, we will have one session every week. And what exactly are we going to cover in that week, and what are you supposed to do during the week when we don't have the live Zoom session? So it's a once a week training course where we will have 1.5 to 2 hours teaching per session. It depends on the topic. So sometimes you might even go slightly over 2 hours as well, depending on which topic we are doing. If we are talking about access control list or network address translation or something in more detail, then we might even go a little bit overboard. But if the topic is a smaller one like CDP, LLDP, then it might be 1.5 hours. So it's actually content driven instead of the time driven course. So we'll see that what content or what topic we are covering that week, and accordingly the session will go. Now, how do we actually uh, structurize this 2 hour session? Is that overall we will have 24 weeks of course, so one a week. But in these 2 hours that we are having this live Zoom session, we are going to start with the theory. So let's take an example. Let's say I start OSPF today. So OSPF is one of the routing protocols, open shortest path first. So I'm going to assume that you know nothing about OSPF and we are starting from scratch. So you might have some idea here and there about how OSPF works, but it is going to bridge that gap, and it will make sure that you understand it comfortably. So we start with the theory. I'll explain all the important stuff that you need to know about OSPF. And of course, once you understand the flow of the OSPF, the types of packets it support what kind of routing it is, like linked state routing and all. So after that, we'll see the configuration example, and then we start the lab. So I'll come to the lab part later as well. I will explain you how exactly the labs work. But you will see that in the lab, there will be instructions step by step, and you need to perform that lab on a topology in the EVNG software. So when you open the topology, you will be able to boot the routers and switches, and they are already pre-connected. That's why I'm calling it a topology. So I already have pre-installed or pre-created topologies for you guys. And when you open the OSPF topology and you open the PDF, the lab file that I will send you, you will find the same lab that I solved into the Zoom session. And the reason for that is that, again, as I was mentioning earlier, that it's not for testing. I am not testing you guys right away. We are learning for the next 6 months. So when I do the lab here, step by step, you will immediately apply the knowledge that you just gained into the theoretical part. So you learn something, and then you see me applying it into the configuration, and we get a complete working practical at the end of the lab, that everything is working, the communication is enabled, and all the different parameters that we need to learn about OSPF are already configured. And OSPF I'm just taking as an example, right? It could be any other thing as well that we are going to learn step by step. So I will do that, and then I will send you the lab. So during the week, you are supposed to complete that lab anytime when you get some time, and it will be a small lab, so it should not take much time. And even if it is taking more time, let's say if you are just starting with your Cisco journey, and it is taking you 2 to 3 days to complete a lab, maybe few points one day and then a few other points next day, it is completely fine. That's why we have a 1 week gap, so you can actually practice that lab as many times as you like, to become comfortable with the commands, to become comfortable with the concepts, and also you practice it as much as possible, right? And every week we are going to start with a new topic. Sometimes the topic is big. For example, OSPF is a big topic, so we might go 2 weeks, OSPF part 1 and part 2. But most of the topics you will see, it will be covered in 1 week. So if we start, for example, Ether channel, I'll explain you everything you need to know about Ether channel, and then I'll solve the lab here in front of you, and then of course you will have the lab and the EVNG setup so that you can practice it on your own during the week, right? So that's how we will go. Now, remember, in CCNA course, there are many topics which are purely theoretical. So there are no hands-on required for that. So those topics we are not going to cover because this is a completely hands-on class. But it doesn't mean that you will not get those topics. We have all the recordings to understand the theory of that part, which you will get access to for lifetime as well. So anything we are doing in this class, there are pre-recorded sessions for these as well, which will be available to you for lifetime access. So in case if you miss a class or if you want to go through the class again, you can always get the recording on our website where you log in and then you can access to your content. For example, 0 to 6 content, right? So it will be available lifetime. So as I was saying that I'll start with the theory. Then there will be multiple practical labs, and these labs will be spent across the 24 weeks program. And once the session is done, the lab PDF will be sent to you, and you will be able to use it. And I will also send you the solution file along with it. And the reason for this is that, again, it's not a test. So whenever you get stuck while you are doing the lab, you can always refer to the recording of the video Zoom session and also the solution file, which will have the exact answer for the question. And this way, you will solidify your understanding and you will make sure that everything is clear before we move on to the next topic, right? And it's a completely hands-on approach, as you can see, because maybe initial week, like when we are talking about IP addressing and subnetting, it will be theoretical, but immediately after that, once we get to the VLANs trunking, ether channel switching part, it will immediately become the hands-on program, right? So the tool that we were talking about, and this is most important because every week, and it's a hands-on program, so every week when you have to do the lab, and for doing the lab, you need routers and switches. Now, it's not very practical to buy routers and switches and create a rack just for CCNA exam. So that's why we are using an exam emulator. So the emulator that we use is called EVNG, and it's a free emulator available on internet, evng.net. You can go and check it out there, and you can actually import it on the VMware because it's actually a Linux operating system. I think it is CentOS, and it is installed with all the required stuff. And the only thing is that it doesn't have any images. So if you do it on your own, if you are, let's say, if you are downloading EVNG from the website and you are importing it into VMware, you will see that it's a completely blank EVNG. Like it's like a chassis, which no routers, which has images, or no firewall images, no SD-WAN images, nothing is there. So if you are uh, planning to do some practice on, let's say, Cisco routers and switches, then you will have to go on the internet and find the images first, or if you have a Cisco partner account, you can download the iOS images from there, and then you will have to import them into EVNG, and there is a procedure to license them. You have to complete that licensing procedure, and then the routers and switches will be available to you inside the EVNG portal. But after that, you will have to think about topologies, like how do I connect them to maximum utilize all the features of a particular protocol. So how do I create the topology? So you will have to create your own topologies as well. That's a lot of work. So we wanted to make sure that you have the minimum resistance when you are learning technologies. Like if you are learning VLANs and trunking, I don't want you to go and look for Cisco switch images and then find out the licensing procedure. Then there will be issues, and then you have to go to the forums and find out how to fix it, and then you have to think about a topology, and then you can come to the actual topic of VLAN trunking. We wanted to get rid of all the issues and directly get you to the solution. So what I have done is that I have already created topologies which are already set in EVNG. So we have the EVNG, we have the images already set up inside EVNG, and we already have configured all the necessary licenses for that. And I have created different topologies as well, which I'll show you in a few minutes. So, and then after this, this whole package is created or packaged into an OVA file, .ova, which you can easily import into the VMware. So from the customer side or from your side, all you need is VMware workstation. And that is also, there is a free version called VMware Workstation Player. So you can actually download it from the VMware website. It's completely free. And once it is installed, you can actually import the OVA that I will send you, and you will have a completely working EVNG ready for use available to you, right? Which will have all the images, all the licenses, and the pre-built topologies that we will use for all our labs. So we cut down all the unnecessary searching, hunting, and troubleshooting for the EVNG part, and we directly get to the topics that we need to learn, right? So that's why this is going to be a huge advantage for you, as you don't need to invest huge money in buying routers and switches, because this is an emulator. So you get all the benefits of the real devices. Emulator means that it is using the actual iOS images in the background, but just the front end is not hardware; it is just a software, right? But the back end is still the actual iOS image. It's not a simulator, unlike packet tracer, for example. Cisco has a packet tracer program, which is a simulator. Simulator means it will simulate as if it is a router or switch. So it will show you the outputs according to them. So it's not actually the iOS image in the background. But here we will have the actual iOS images in the background. So you will get all the commands that you will get on any real device, like a physical router or a switch. So the OVO file that I will send you, or I think I have already sent you guys. So if you, in case if you don't have the OVO file, you can get in touch with me. I will send you the link. You just need to import it into the EVNG. Now, we always recommend to use Microsoft Windows for using EVNG on VMware, because we have seen there will be some issues if you use Linux or Mac OS. These are minor issues, but still they can actually steal your time and take the focus away from CCNA. So it's better to use a Windows machine where everything works perfectly fine. And the OVS that I have created are also created on Windows machine. So they will work perfectly fine on a Windows machine. So you just need to import it into the EVNG, and I'll show you the procedure how to do that. And after that, you will be ready to go, right? One thing, if you're using a Windows machine, I will also send you a file along with the OVA, which is called the EVNG Windows Client Pack. Now, this Windows Client Pack is also very important, because you want to click on the device so that the terminal window opens, right? Where you can start typing the commands. So when you switch on the devices, you want to just click on it and the terminal app should immediately start. And for that, you need to install the EVNG Windows Client Pack, which is a small software. And that's why I have included it into the link that I sent you to download the OVA file. So there you can also download that Windows Client Pack as well. So I think I have it somewhere here. Let me see. Yeah. So you can see that these are the two files I'll send you, or I have already sent you. Is the OVA file, which is the big file because it's the complete Linux operating system for EVNG, and the Windows Client Pack. So OVA you just need to import into VMware, and the Windows Client Pack is something that you need to install. Double click and install. So it's a very simple installation. You can just do next, next, next. Anything it asks you that do you want to install, you just select all that. So you will just install that up. And once you install Windows Client Pack, it will be very useful for your OVA as well, right? For your VMware. So once you have the VMware workstation installed, let's say you have VMware workstation player, like I have this version 17, you will see something like this, right? And in this workstation player, you can import your OVA by going to the player, file, and open. So you can also press Ctrl+O to open the OVA file. So this is one way. And the second method is you can directly double click on the OVA file. And if you have VMware workstation installed, it will actually import the file, immediately associate itself to the VMware workstation. So two different ways are there to do it, to import the OVA file. So once you import the file from here, let's say you click on open and you click on a particular OVF file. Let's say we go to the EVNG file, and then this is the OVF file, right? So when you click on open, it will ask you the name for this new virtual machine. So you can give it a friendly name like 02 CCNA May or something like this. So you can actually decide the name. So whatever the name you choose, that's fine. That is what it will show you here. So I already have 0216 as you can see here. So we don't need to import it again. But then you will click on import and it should be imported. And it will show up something like this, as you can see, 0216 or whatever the name you have decided to use. Now, once you have the file, let's say you imported it and it is showing you here, it will show you some information on the right hand side, like how much RAM it has assigned to it and what version it is using. So it is a Ubuntu, actually Ubuntu operating system it is using. So you should actually change few things here according to your system. Like if you're using a laptop or a desktop with 8 gig of RAM or 16 gig of RAM, so you might want to change the allocated RAM to the system. Now for CCNA, I would say that if you have a 8 gig of RAM laptop or a desktop, that is actually more than sufficient. Out of which you can actually assign around 6 gig to 0 to CCNA OVA. Don't worry, it is not going to reserve the whole 6 gig. It is actually as and when it needs to use it, it will start using more and more. So it will start from the minimum, and then when you start the devices, it will start using slightly more RAM. So, but it's not going to use all 6 gig all the time. So don't worry, your system will have a lot of RAM available, even if you assign 6 gig RAM to this one, right? In my case, as you can see that I have actually 128 gig RAM in my desktop, so I can assign up to 64 gig RAM. But still, I am keeping it 8 gig because for CCNA, you actually don't need more than that. Excuse me. The 8 gig RAM is more than sufficient. So when we go back to here, you will see that that's why I mentioned that the recommended RAM for this is 8 gig. 8 gig, that means the system memory, right? It's not the memory that you assign to the EVNG. That one you can assign 6 gig or even 4 gig will also be sufficient for CCNA. But your system should have at least 8 gig RAM. If your system has only 4 gig RAM, then it might become slightly slower because only 1 or 2 gig RAM will be available to EVNG, right? So recommended RAM for system is 8 gig. And after importing OVA, we have to make sure that we adjust the RAM according to our required value, and also to set the first interface to network address translation on NAT if it is not already done. So what do I mean here? So if we go back to our VMware, and let me actually get down CCNA to actually show you this. Oh, no, actually, I can show you this with some other one as well. Let's see. So let's say I go to the edit virtual machine setting. After you import it, we click on memory, and then we can actually move the memory how much we need, or we can also type it here how much memory do we want to allocate it. So according to your requirement, you can actually do it. If you have a 16 gig desktop or laptop, you can also set it to 8 gig. That will be actually great. But 4 or 6 gig will also work perfectly fine. But the second most important thing is you will see a couple of network adapters here, right? Network adapter and network adapter 2. So you can actually ignore the network adapter 2, but the first one, the network adapter, that one should be set to network address translation or NAT. So it is going to share the host IP address, and you will get an IP address automatically when you boot or reboot the EVNG. So if it is set to bridged or host only or something else, then change it to NAT and then click on OK, right? So that is something you need to remember. Once you do this, and after that you click on play virtual machine, it will actually boot up, and you will actually see something like this. Yeah, so you will see a screen. EVNG will boot, and after some time it will actually leave you at this prompt. So you can see it is showing EVNG login, but before EVNG login, you can see it is showing an IP address here, and that is very important because we will be using EVNG as a graphical tool, graphical user interface. It's a GUI tool, so we don't necessarily need to log in here into this Linux backend operating system. Where we need to log in is the web browser and go to this IP address on that web browser, so that we can actually start checking out the topologies of EVNG and start practicing with Cisco routers and switches, right? You need to log in here if you have a new EVNG and you need to find the iOS images by yourself and somehow copy them into this Linux machine, then install all the licenses. For that purpose, you need to know some Linux commands also, and you need to log into this Linux system as well. But to complete your 0 to CCNA course, you don't need any of those things. All you need is to boot the EVNG. Make sure you can see this screen where you can see the IP address, and just note down the IP address. Like this is 192.168.79.130, because I will be opening this IP address into a browser to start using EVNG, right? So once you reach to this point, you can just minimize EVNG. Don't close it. After minimizing it, you can actually open one of the browsers. And then in the browser, you can just type that IP address like 192.168.79.130 and press enter. So it will ask you for the username and password. So the default username password are admin. Admin is the username, and Eve is the password. Eve means EVE, right? Which is the name of the EVNG, EVE. So admin and Eve, the password is right there in front of your eyes, as you can see, emulated virtual environment, EVE. Then you can just click on sign in. So this, the last point, you don't need to change anything. You can just click on native console and sign in. And actually, when you sign in, you will get something like this. So let's do it again. You get to this point when you type the IP address. In case if after typing IP address you don't see this screen, what you can do is you can go to the command prompt CMD on your Windows machine. Make sure that you can ping this address 192.168.79.130. So this is the IP that we received here, right? When we were booting EVNG, this IP address. So I'm trying to ping this, and you should receive some reply, right? So you should have reachability to this IP. If you don't have reachability, then maybe you need to restart your or reboot your EVNG again and try to get the IP address using the net. Maybe you change the network interface to or network adapter to net and did not reboot, so it might not show you IP address. Sometimes people have this that they don't even receive an IP address here. So the best thing is to make sure that your if you go to manage and virtual machine settings, make sure your network adapter is set to net, as I was saying, and after that you can actually restart the device. So you can actually do a restart guest from the power, so that you should get an IP address. So you should get an IP address here, and it should be openable here into the browser, right? So once you open this into the browser and you log in with the username, password, admin, and EU, you will get to a list of topologies. So these topologies, what I was talking about, that these are pre-built by me, and they have the necessary configuration as well. Like if you're starting with switching, they will have no configuration because we want to start from scratch, everything we want to configure. But let's say if you want to configure OSPF, so there's a topology for OSPF. When you click on this and you click on open, you will see that the topology is actually divided into different areas for OSPF, like OSPF area 0 in the middle, then area 1, area 2, area 3 for branch 1, branch 2, and branch 3, so that you know which part will go into which area. So different topologies will have different kind of drives, and there'll be some pre-configuration here depending on what do we need to do. So since we are concentrating on routing, switching is already configured. So trunking and VLAN should already be there, which you can see here into the startup configuration. Like you can see that all the trunking commands should already be there when you start the devices, because our concentration is not trunking in this particular lab. So when we come to the trunking, there you will do it from the scratch, right? So we will have different topologies. So we have 24 weeks, and we will have 24 different labs, or maybe some lab, most of them will be the practical labs. Maybe initially like subnetting and IP addressing lab will be not EVNG based, but most of these labs will be practical. So why do I see only limited number of topologies here if I have 24 weeks and 20 to 24 labs? The reason is that most of the switching practicals we will do into this one, 0 to CCNA topology, and most of the routing practicals we will do with the 0 to CCNA routing. So the topics will change every week, but the topology will remain same. So there are two benefits of this. First is you get familiar with the topology. So you will see, okay, I have a branch 1, I have branch 2, and I have branch 3. They are connected via a particular router. So, so this is something is very good for you, beneficial for you, that you become familiar with this. Second benefit you get by using the same topology is that you concentrate on the technology instead of the design, because it's not a design course. I don't want you to immediately adapt to the new design and configure it. We want to concentrate more on the packet flow, how exactly the traffic is moving, how do we enable communication between PCs from different branches, or PCs and routers between different branches. So we will concentrate on the technology rather than the design. That's why we keep most of the topologies same, right? So you will see something like this. So once you click on a topology, you open it, and let's actually make it slightly zoomed in so we can see more devices clearly. Let's say in branch 1, I see a device R1, which is a router, and I see SW1, which is a switch, like switch 1 and router 1. So how do I access these devices? What are the different ways I can do it? So since you have imported the OVA I sent you, the images are already there, licenses are already there. So all you need to do is to start them and access them. So to start the devices, there are two methods. On the left hand side, you see that there is a menu. There are many different options here. So when you go to this menu, you will see there is a option of more actions, and here you can click on start all nodes. Start all nodes, right? So if you do that, then all the devices will be started. So when you click on this, and if you wait for some time, you will see that the devices will turn light blue or light green. I'm a little colorblind, but you can see that the device color changed. And also one thing you will notice, let's say if I stop this R1, that when the device is stopped, it is like this gray color, and also the square box is here in front of the name. R before the R1 name, you see a square black box. But if the device is started, it's like light blue color, and you see this like a angular design, right? The play button basically. So when you right click and start a device, so you can see that one method was to go to more actions and start all nodes. Second method is to just right click on the device and click on start, right? So if you are just starting or stopping individual device, you can just do that. And then it should change to play button with the light blue color device. So now you know the devices are started, and now you can actually access them. So how do I access them to configure it? So that's where the second part comes into the picture, the EVNG Windows client pack, right? The EVNG Windows client. So we want to make sure that when you click on the device, let's say if I am clicking on this R1, I should be able to open the software that I want to open it, right? So in Putty or any other software that we are using, I should be able to open this device here, and I should be able to access this. Similarly, if I click on switch one, it should open it here, and you can see that I should be able to access the device directly, right? So all the commands and everything should work perfectly fine, just like a switch. So how do I access the device like this? So if you want to do this, that you just click on the device and it should open it into the Putty. You need to install this Windows client pack, as I was talking about. So once you install this, then you have to do one more thing. Once it is done, installation is finished. Of course, you can try first. You can actually start a particular topology and try to click on a device and see if Putty opens or not. If it doesn't open, don't worry. You just need to make a link into the registry, Windows registry, and then it will start opening. Basically, what I'm talking about is that when you click something into a browser, like I'm using Google Chrome, you might be using Mozilla Firefox or Microsoft Edge or something else. So if you're using a browser and you are clicking on a device, then the EVNG is requesting the browser to open the terminal app. The terminal app is the Putty app, right? That we use to get that CLI for our routers and switches. So the EVNG is requesting browser to open the terminal app, but the browser must have Putty as the terminal app, because if the browser doesn't have Putty as the terminal app, nothing will happen, or maybe it will give you an error. So we need to make that association that the default terminal app for the browser is Putty. And how do you do that? By creating a link into the registry file. Now, don't worry, you don't need to actually play with the registry. You don't have to go and create something manually. That's why the client pack is there. So once the Windows client pack is installed, you need to go to the C drive. In the C drive, you need to go to the program files. And under the program files, you will see the EVNG folder, right? So this is created by the Windows client pack. So again, first install the Windows client pack, then go to the C drive program files, C drive program files, and then the EVNG folder. Inside the EVNG folder, first thing you will notice that you have the Putty software, which will be used by our devices to give us the terminal window for CLI. But also there are a bunch of registry files you can see here, right? .reg file. And you need to look for the .reg file which has the name Putty. So we can see it is Windows 7 64-bit Ultra VNC Wireshark, and this one is Putty, right? Windows 10 64-bit Putty. So you need to double click on this file, and when you double click on this, it will ask you, do you want to install this link into the registry? You click OK, and click OK again, and then it will be done. After this, once this is done, you should be able to click on the device, and you should be able to open the particular Putty software. That means the CLI window that we get, and when you press enter, you will get the access to the devices like this, right? So this is very important. First, import the OVA, then start all devices, and then install the EVNG client pack, Windows client pack, and then go to the C program files evng folder and install the putty registry file so that you can directly click on the device and access the device, right? Now, let's say that you are working on a lab. So I sent you a lab and you start working on it. So let's say the lab says configure an IP address on router 1, just for an example, right? So you go to router 1, you click on it, you open it into the terminal software, and then you have the requirement to configure a host name. Host name is R1, and then you check IP interface brief. So Ethernet 00 has no IP address, and the requirement is Ethernet 00 should have 12001 IP address. So you go to interface Ethernet 00. Don't worry, we will talk about this the whole atmosphere and what iOS looks like, what are the different modes, everything when we come to the routing part. But just to give you an example of how do you save the configuration. So let's say you are here, you configure something. What you're configuring doesn't matter for the time being. Let's say I configure some IP address. I do a no shutdown, so the interface is up, and I check show IP interface brief, and I see that IP addressing there, right? And then you do a few more things into the lab, and the lab is still not finished. So you did, let's say, 3-4 points, and then you feel tired, or maybe you have some other work, and you said, okay, you know what, I'll do the remaining of the lab later. So what you do is you go and stop all nodes, right? And you close the evng, and after closing evng, and you go back, you do your work, and then you come back maybe next day or maybe after a few hours, and you want to do the remaining of the lab. Some part you already did, right? Like I configuring IP address. So now you start router 1 again, and you go to the router 1, and let's wait for it to boot. And meanwhile, let's start some other device also, like switch 1 as well. You can see it is booting right now. And you can also see that we are using the Linux Advanced Enterprise K9. So this is the name of the iOS images, and this is the version 15.2 that we are using. All right. So initially there is no configuration into the router, so it takes slightly more time. But once you have something saved, then it will actually boot faster. So let's wait for it. So you were doing the lab, and you're doing the different parts of it. For example, just to give you an example, let's say if you have a VLAN and trunking lab, right? So I will send you the VLAN and trunking lab, and it will look something like this. It will tell you which topology to open into evng. Then we have to wipe all nodes so that we start from the base config. So you can go to the more action and wipe all nodes, and then it will tell you what to do, like configure host name, configure VLANs, and whatever we learned into that particular section, right? So there will be instructions, and then you have to complete those instructions. So this is just like a CCIE exam, because in CCIE they actually tell you what to do, and you have to configure those things step by step. On the CCNA level, you only get the multiple choice question exam, right? But you might have some simulations, lab simulations, 1 or 2 or 3 simulations. But we make sure that you learn the hands-on right from the beginning so that you become very comfortable. That's why we have it's like a CCI style. But of course, the questions are not on the difficulty level of CCI. We are also still having on the CCNA or maybe CCNA plus level of difficulty. You read the questions here and you try to configure them here. So you can see that we are back to router 1. We had already configured IP address, right? 12001 on Ethernet 00. But then, much to my surprise, the host name R1 that I had configured is gone. And also if I see the configuration is also gone. So you will think, okay, I did already some work and now that work is gone because I shut down the devices. So what can I do to retain that information? So remember, whenever you make any changes, let's say I say host name is R1, and let's say interface Ethernet 00, IP address is 12001, and now you have to stop for some reason, but you want to start from the same point. You want to start where I have my host name and I have an IP address configured on an interface. So I want to start from this point. I don't want to start from beginning again. So what you can do is you can save the configuration with the command write memory, and you can actually remember this command because this is going to be same for routers and switches both. Write memory or in Cisco, you actually have a tab format, so you can actually just write, let's say WR and just press tab to complete the word for you, and M and complete the word for you, and memory. Or you can also just write WR and press enter, and the system will understand you want to do the right memory. The point is that you want to save your configuration if you want it next time. So now I saved the configuration. Now if I close this router 1, let's say I right click and stop router 1, and I close my EVNG, and then I come back later, and then I click on router 1 and start it again. So this time, because you had saved the configuration, you can go to the Subapati, and you will see that router 1 will have regained that information that you, and you see that this time it actually booted also very fast. So now you see I can see the name R1 and also show IP interface brief. Yes, IP address is still there. So make sure right memory is done so that you have the configuration saved. If you are doing the lab slowly, means if you are doing it in the parts, you did some part now, and other parts you want to do in the evening, maybe next day, then you can actually save it, right? But what is more important here is that let's say you want to start over. Start over means that, hey, I want this router to go back to the blank configuration, right? I want this router to go back to completely base configuration which it started with. So if you want to do that, then you have to go to more action and wipe all nodes. What happens with wipe all nodes? You can do it like this, or you can just click on a single device and you can also click on wipe. It actually removes all the configuration that you did, and it will go back to the startup config, the base config. So currently you can see there is no startup config, means it will go back to the blank configuration. So you can do that if you want to remove all the configuration, uh, but you can save it if you want to keep it even at the time of next reboot, right? I see a question from Mika. Can you use running config startup config command? Yes, absolutely. So you have two options, right? And we are going to discuss about all the different options we have in routing session, where we can use copy running config to startup config, like copy run start, or we can use the write memory. So both options are perfectly viable. One more thing is that right now the my idea is to tell you that when you are doing any configuration throughout this course, you want to retain your configuration, make sure you save the configuration. And then once you are done and you want to do the same lab again from the start, wipe all nodes so that you can get the information, or you can get the router or switches right from the base configuration. Remember that base configuration might not be blank. It might be something else. Like, for example, if I go to 0 to CCNA OSPF, I don't want to configure VLANs and trunking. That should already be there. You will see that if you go to the startup config, there are some configuration here. For example, if I go to switch one, I see that there is already some VLAN configuration, VLAN 10, VLAN 20, trunking is already there. Why? Because it's a routing practical. I don't want to spend time into switching VLAN trunking configuration, which we already did. So in this case, if you wipe node, like let's say if I go to switch one and I do a wipe, it is going to go back to the startup config, which is here. Switch one, and all the trunking and everything will be there. So it is not going to change it to the blank configuration, right? So wiping a node simply sets it back to the startup config, not to the uh, not to the blank config every time, right? It depends on the which topology that you are using. So don't worry, we have made everything very easy for you, because all you need to do is to import the OVA and join the live Zoom session, understand the technology, watch me configuring the lab step by step, and then do the same during the week with the lab that I will send you, or the PDF for the lab that I will send you using one of these topologies, right? So that's the basic idea behind EVNG, and you can see that we have removed all the complex stuff from the EVNG, and you get all the good stuff. You can directly jump to the technologies and concentrate on this part, right? So having said that, uh, let's talk about what are the topics that we are going to cover during this course. Now, as I told you that we want to concentrate more on the topics which are hands-on. There might be some topics which are not hands-on, but important enough to include them. So we will include them here. For example, today is the introduction class. So we are just making sure you understand what exactly will be covered. And then we are going to start with addressing and subnetting. So IPv4 addressing and subnetting are the topics which are very important. These are the base topics for anything that you are going to do in networking field. maybe you don't like Cisco. After some time, you want to move to Juniper or Alcatel. Everywhere IP addressing will be used. Like IP addressing is the logical addressing, and it is the absolute necessary part to learn. And subnetting is also very, very important. And subnetting is also mathematical solution, right? So basically, this is not a configurable solution. It is more like a mathematical solution. So you need to calculate how many subnets will be there, how many IPs will be there. So we have some shortcut methods for this, so it doesn't become boring and it becomes easier and accurate every time when you calculate subnetting. Plus, we also understand the importance of subnetting. So you will see that even if you are doing the OSPF lab, or even if you are doing, let's say, access control list lab, you will see subnetting will still be covered, or we will use subnetting somewhere into the lab here and there. So you keep on practicing subnetting for the next 24 weeks. Right? So subnetting is very important. That's why we will have a dedicated lab for subnetting. But then every week in every lab also we will include subnetting here and there, so that you keep on practicing subnetting as well. And then of course we will move to switching, which is the switches and the broadcast domains. So the VLANs and trunking, Ether channel, STP, those topics will be covered. So all the important topics which are core of the switching we will cover there. And then we'll move to layer 3 routing, where we'll cover the router basic config and SSH. So how do you configure router on a basic level? How do you secure it? How do you secure its access if somebody is directly accessing the router, or if somebody is accessing it over the internet or over the IP network using telnet or secure shell? How do you configure it and how do you secure it? That is something we will learn here. And then we will move to routing. So static and default routing, OSPF routing protocol. So in new CCNA, you don't have RIP or EIGRP. So EIGRP is moved now to CCNP, and RIP is completely removed, routing information protocol, because it's a very old protocol, very limited protocol, and you don't need to know about this for your CCNA exam. But bonus material here, if you go and watch the recordings, like you will have the access to the recordings of the sessions from previous classes throughout the duration of this course, right? So you will see that we do have the recordings for RIP and EIGRP where we were still teaching it. So if you are interested in learning basics of those routing protocols, you will have access to those recordings. But we will not cover this into this course because it's not part of the CCNA exam. One more thing, that the recordings that you will see on the portal, they are from the previous classes. So the same 0 to CCNA class, but one of the previous version. But the concept and the core idea will be same. But of course, I like to make sure that the teaching is not boring. It's not actually specific bound to some limited points. That's why this is the only session where you will see the PPT. After this, you will only see pure logic and configuration that we will go to. We will not go to the PowerPoint slides and the points. So that's why there might be some things that you will get more when you join when you join the live Zoom session. That's why it is recommended that you join live Zoom session. But in case if you miss it and you go and watch the recording from the previous classes, you will get all the important information to pass the CCNA exam for that topic. You will not miss anything important, right? But just to be clear that the recordings will not be from the existing sessions. It will be from the one of the previous classes from last year. And we will also cover IPv6 and some of the IP services, for example, generic routing encapsulation, tunnels, network address translation, network time protocol, domain naming system, and dynamic host configuration protocol. So these services are actually configured once your routing is already in place and switching is already in place. That's why these are called IP services. These are the services you can provide and use for different purposes, right? So we will actually go through them as well. Access control list, one of the very, very important topic for CCNA, because this is the security part of CCNA, you can say. So you want to control the access. So thanks to switching and routing, you will enable the communication between devices. But now, since you have enabled the communication, you want to control it. You want to know that who can go where, which services will be accessible. So you can actually control that by using access control list, ACLs, right? So very, very useful topic, and this is one of the practical topics that you will like, and most probably you will get a simulation in CCNA exam about ACL because it's very, very important topic, right? And we'll go through some wireless basics as well. So wireless, you don't have any practical or any configuration lab into the CCNA exam, And but you should be aware of the basics of wireless. What exactly do we mean by BSS, ESS? What is SSID? What are the different frequency ranges? And what is the use case of wireless LAN controller, lightweight access point? All these things you should know or you should be aware of. So we'll definitely go through these things as well. And of course, some layer 2 security features. So in layer 3, we saw ACS, but what about layer 2? There are some security features to safeguard your switching environment as well. So that is something we'll go through as well. These topics are something that we can actually practice, we can lab it. That's why they are part of this course. But then other things like if you want to know the basics of programmability, or if you want to learn what are the first job redundancy protocols, these are theoretical topics which you can actually find in our recorded session list as well. So you will get the full access to all the topics you need to pass CCNA exam. But here we will cover all the topics where you can actually do the lab as well, or you can actually practically check it out as well. All right, so let's talk about the exam. What are you expected to see in the exam? Like one year we were discussing that used to be ICND1, ICND2, and even before that, they had a different structure for CCNA starting from 1998 when the CCNA actually started. So now the current one or existing CCNA exam is 200-301. Excuse me. And this one is actually 2 hours exam, and it contains the multiple choice questions, drag and drop, table matching, and simulation. So you will see that it's a weighted exam. Means some questions will have more weight, means it will have more points, and some other questions will have less weight and less points will be awarded for doing those questions. For example, MCQs have less weight comparing to drag and drops, or drag and drops have less weight comparing to simulations. The most numbers that you will get will be with the simulation. Simulations means the lab. So there will be maybe 2 or 3 labs in the exam. And I'm saying maybe because sometimes there is no lab at all. And sometimes you get 2 or 3 labs where they will ask you configure an ACL according to this requirement, or configure OSPF or fix OSPF according to this. So you will be able to click on the device just like we do in EVNG, and the terminal will open and you will have to troubleshoot or configure according to the requirement. But this is actually very basic configuration comparing to what we will do in next 24 weeks. So if you go through this course, simulation will become very easy for you guys, right? And this will be the most point rewarding part of the exam, right? So there will be around 50 to 60 questions. Most of them will be MCQs and drag and drop or table matching. 3 or 4 maybe simulations will be there, right? So mostly it is MCQs. And how this program can help you to achieve your CCNA certification and also become more comfortable and confident into networking, your networking journey. So we cover all the important theory. So one of the things that I like, and it's a cliche, but it's my passion, is to teach, to train people. And when there is that aha moment that you learn something and you understand something, oh, okay, this is how it works. That makes you happy, and that makes me happy that you understood that part. So this is something that you will enjoy a lot. So theory, generally people associate this with the boring stuff, but we are trying to make it not boring and more interesting, right? So you will actually enjoy this part as well, and you will learn a lot. And of course, multiple labs to start practicing from day one. We start hands-on immediately. We start with the subnetting, and then we get to the switching and routing part immediately after that. And this is actually a 24 weeks course, so we have ample time to do practice. And this is actually deliberate because we saw that although CCNA is the entry level certification according to Cisco, but there's nothing entry level in CCNA. There are so many topics, and they are actually asked with the considerable details. So it takes some time to get used to them and to get acquainted to them. For example, if you are working already in networking industry with routers and switches every day, then maybe for you it's just a quick recap for everything and then you are good. But if you are coming from another field, or if you have been in networking industry but not using Cisco devices for a long time, then it might be very challenging to grasp everything immediately, like within a week, like a boot camp, and then go for the exam. Maybe you have a chance to pass the exam, but you won't be able to retain or regain a lot of information that you learn. So having a 24 weeks spread out course, what happens is that every week we concentrate only on one technology, and then we do the lab, and then we give you time to do that lab as many times as you like, because you will have the whole week for you and to ask any questions or any to clear any doubt. So that way we make sure that we solidify our understanding of every technology step by step, and by the end of this course it should be you will become very, very comfortable and confident about these technologies, right? That's why it is straightforward, 6 months. So my support will be there throughout the duration. So anytime you have any questions, so within the Zoom session, after every topic, we will have a Q&A session. So it's a small Q&A session where if you have any doubts immediately, you can ask me. But most of the time, I have seen that you don't have most of the doubts right now. But when you start doing it on your own, let's say somewhere during the week, and then you start having some questions. So that's why we have our Facebook CCI or CCNA, CCI group, where you can ask the question and I will answer there. And also there are so many other helpful students there who have already done CCNA. Some are already on the CCI level, and they will also be able to answer your questions. So it's a great community, and that will also help other students. So if you have a question which other people did not think about and you ask it on the community, others will also be able to see that and see the solution, and it will help them as well. So the primary way to get support from me or to ask me question will be the Facebook group. If you don't want to join that, or if you can't somehow access that, then you can also go to the recordings on our website. Let's say you just joined the STP live session, right? Sending Tree protocol. And then you go and check the STP recording on the website. Just below the recorded video, there will be a comment section where you can also leave your comment or your question, and I will be more than happy to answer your question as soon as possible there, right? So there will be a support from me as well. And I'll send you the lab PDF along with the solution, so that every week you have the documents of what exactly we covered and what exactly do I need to practice, and all the solution about that technology as well. And you get the lifetime access to the recordings that we have, and that is a big thing, because if you get stuck somewhere and you have to stop for some time, you want to restart later, you will have the complete recordings of everything, and the lab access will also be there. So for if I although I will send you the labs on the email also, just as a backup, but you can also download the lab from the video. So when you go and watch a particular video on our website, there will be a section where you can download the lab PDF and the solution file right from there as well, right? So this can be very, very useful. All right. So apart from this, you also must be curious about myself, that who am I and what about me? So my name is Arpit Pandit, and I have been in training industry for more than 18 years now. And mostly for the last 10 to 12 years, I have been teaching CCIE mainly, but before that also, and even after that also, I also have taken CCNP, CCNA, Juniper classes, Linux classes, Microsoft classes as well. So as you can see, that training is something that I like. And I have done myself, I have done two CCIs. So one is in routing and switching, and one is in service provider. So I am a dual CCI, so I know exactly how the Cisco actually work and how it actually asks question in the exams, which can help the students eventually. So now actually it's 18 years of training experience, more than that. And I also have a lot of practical experience as a consultant to various organizations, because as a CCI, I provide my services to fix particular issues, and they can take my services to as a consultant to give them some insights what they can do to improve their network security and performance, right? And as I said, it's a cliche, but this is actually true for me. Training is my passion, and I really like more than as a business. I see it as something that I like, and it's actually fun for me. And when there is a class, I look forward, and I'm happy to teach, because when I'm teaching and there is something that we've solved, maybe there is something that is new for you and you learn, or maybe there is something new for both of us and we fix it together. That's a great feeling, and that actually gives you a new experience, new learning. So that is something I like a lot, right? So with that, we can get started from next week. And from your side, I would just like to say that remember just one word: show up into the live Zoom sessions, so that we get connected. And of course, you can watch the recordings as well. But when you are into the live Zoom session, you can ask questions also, and you can see me performing exactly the labs that you will also be doing. That can actually help you a lot, right? So definitely show up and make sure that you are consistent. If there are any gaps or anything, don't worry. There are recordings you can do, but it's just try to be consistent into the live Zoom classes. That will be great, right? So with that, I thank you guys, and that's it from today's session because I just wanted to introduce what we are going to go through. So this week, just make sure you set up EvenG and everything is good. If you have any issue with EvenG, send a comment and maybe a screenshot on the Facebook group that we have, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And once your EvenG is set up and everything is good, we are ready to go. Although next week we will start with IP addressing and subnetting. So technically you will get 2 weeks. You will have next week also, because for subnetting lab you don't need EvenG. It's just a theoretical lab. But yeah, from after that, VLANs and trunking, and we'll immediately start switching. So you will need the access to subnetting as well, right? So let me allow you to unmute in case if you have any questions. Yeah, there you go. So thanks guys, and let me know if you have any questions.